All right, I'm Telecon, or Chris. You're here for B-Sides Denver 2020, Socially Distant. Our first speaker this morning is Benjamin Edelen, and he's going to talk about incident response, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and mute out. And take it away. Everybody enjoy.
All right. So my name is Benjamin Edelen, and I am the Chief Information Security Officer at the City of Boulder. And as a CISO, I am not a subject matter expert at any topic because I have to do a whole lot of different kinds of stuff for a city, which is an organization that has a whole bunch of different kinds of businesses going on at the same time. Things like airports and police departments and public libraries and rec centers. And every one of those types of businesses are deploying technology very quickly. And so it's my responsibility to respond to incidents that we have in those technology areas. And I have some folks who are helping me with that. But one of the most powerful skills I've found in any domain is the ability to organize people into a work effort that stops damage from happening and that restores your organization to functionality. And during my time at the city, I've been through a variety of major incidents, including major fires, floods, the floods of 2013, and this pandemic response. And so I've learned by hanging out with and watching our emergency management folks, and Boulder has an Office of Emergency Management. Over time, I began to see that they had a methodology that they used for responding to what they call all hazards incidents. So hazmat, fire, flood, and then in other parts of the country, they have things like hurricanes. And that methodology it seemed really cool to me, but it didn't seem super accessible for whatever reason. It was usually happening inside an emergency operations center. There were big screens up on the TV. All kinds of people were working at the same time. And you didn't get a lot of face time with the emergency managers to kind of pick their brain or understand what was happening at their scale. So eventually I got into a position within my organization where I could go meet our head emergency manager and ask for help and ask for some training about how this works. And actually the federal government does provide what's called ICS training. And that training would educate you about sort of this methodology, but it doesn't, it isn't really immediately adapted to cybersecurity. And I was interested in responding to cybersecurity incidents on behalf of my organization of all kinds. And I wanted that skill set. So over time, I was able to learn this, the broad strokes of the ICS methodology and adapt them. And you'll have to forgive me as I go through this presentation, because this isn't a perfect adaptation of ICS. I am a minimalist. I like to cut out things that are not working or unnecessary in most situations. And so there are many elements of incident handling that you will need to inject back in especially if you have a bigger incident. I think that it's important that cybersecurity people realize that even though we may be able to respond to a cybersecurity incident and gather a group of people and work a problem, we are not good at things like figuring out where people are going to sleep or making sure that they stay the appropriate distance from each other while they're working through an in-person work engagement during a pandemic, or even just making sure that pizzas are coming, everybody's getting fed, everyone's getting hydrated with safe to drink water, things like that. So incident handling people have that stuff on lockdown, which is part of why I wanted their skill set. So over time, I developed this hybrid or this sort of variant on ICS that is specifically targeted for cybersecurity. And I've worked many incidents with it. And one of the things that had me really encouraged was a few years ago when the state had an incident at the Colorado Department of Transportation. I know that ICS was used, that a methodology similar to my own was used to respond to that incident. And that actually allowed and scaled all the way up to the Colorado National Guard responding to that incident. And that was a historic response to a cybersecurity issue. And it gave me a lot of confidence that my methodology was going to be useful and scalable all the way up to like truly mega sized response where a military could even take over and respond in turn on behalf of my organization. And yeah, I was going to say I have run dozens and dozens of incidents, and the vast majority of those incidents were not major. There are very minor incidents, but I do think this gets to the heart of getting through those SANS phases of recovery and capturing what you need to know about your incident. And it's kind of elegant. And like any cool tool, once you go through an incident with me, you just sort of learn what you need to know to do it yourself. And I thought that was really neat. I've gone through this incident process with people before, and they've been able to come out with the ability to run incidents themselves, which I thought was a really neat outcome, and one that I wanted to share with B-Sides Denver. And I've also used this methodology in other parts of my life. So I will say that my wife got breast cancer at about this time last year, and I used a very similar methodology to this to help get her through her chemotherapy and surgery. So this methodology can be used for a variety of types of major incidents in your personal life as well as in your professional life. But the goal here is that I'm going to run through an incident. And if you kind of pay attention to the tools, and if you want copies of these tools, they'll be available at the end. You will have some tools that will let you jump in and kick off an incident in your own organization and effectively manage it through the entire incident. The tools are well enough designed that just by putting these up, the incident begins to sort of self-organize and handle itself, as long as you get some people assigned into the roles, which is pretty awesome. And you'll see what I mean here in a minute. But I want everyone watching this to envision, first of all, this methodology came out of conference room incident handling. It's not an international tool. Doug Brush could be here to tell us about international incident handling. I tend to pull technical people into conference rooms and get the right people in there and kick off an incident. And so the first phase, once I know that something is an incident, the first thing that I do is I go get those giant white contact sheets that you can stick up on the wall. I get a big sheet of those, and I get a box of markers, and that is the main tool that I use for incident handling. I have a set of Windows stickies here, which is nothing like my cool sheets. But imagine a conference room, any work conference room, you want to put those big contact sheets up on the wall, north, south, east, and west. And every single person who walks into that conference room can read the contact sheets on each wall and see where are we at in this incident. All the information you need is on this growing set of contact sheets that are on the wall. And when I manage incidents over Microsoft Teams for my organization, I use Mural, which is an application that lets multiple people jump on and edit the equivalent of those contact sheets. I'm going to share my screen here and throw up mine. Oh, screen sharing is disabled by the host. All right, I'll have to ask that the host hook me up with the ability to share my screen. And I keep in my mic.
Should be good to go.
Okay. I keep a template for these contact sheets. Which one is? Okay. I keep these templates around because they make this work. So the first contact sheet that I put up is the instruction sheet. And I'm going to open that up here, and I'm going to stick it. And you're just going to have to imagine that I've grabbed a marker and I've written this on a white contact sheet, or, like I said, a tool where the whole team is able to write on these sheets as well. I'm going to throw these up, and then I'm going to explain what each one of them is about and why and how these work. And then I'm going to run through an incident that is relatively real, unfortunately. But the names have been changed to protect the innocent. So imagine that you just got sucked into a conference room, and there's 4 big white sticky sheets on the wall, and these are what they say. The first sheet is the instructions for how we handle incidents. And this list of instructions has grown over time, and it is important for me and my process that everybody take a moment to read the instructions before they join an incident handling team. So I'm sitting alone in a conference room trying to kick off an incident, and I'm writing this up here. And then obviously things are confidential. You know, obviously we don't want people speaking at the same time, but some of these down here came out of more unique experience. We will often find team members will be hesitant to add things to the worksheets on the walls themselves. It is critical in this process that people are comfortable participating and writing things up on the sheets. When external communications are being written, a lot of times the chat is too noisy, or the people talking are too noisy, and so it's okay to tell everyone to quiet down and to stop side conversations. And then you build out your team and write down who they are. You'll need this information later, so it's important to write it down. I publish the links. This is a new addition to this for when I'm managing these things online, because I think that sometimes people will want something they can copy and paste to get back into the chat quickly without having to look for it. Anyway, let me kick off a demo incident, and I will show you exactly how these function. And I'm going to try to move my little window out of the way so you can see the other side. Okay. So imagine that I am hanging out, eating my lunch in my office or at home, since we're all at home, and I get a phone call saying that our senior system administrator has just gotten a barrage of file change warnings on like a Windows file share, and they're super scary. So, and suspecting a cryptoware attack on those systems, that sysadmin shut the servers down, just sort of proactively. That was the best thing he could think to do. He didn't want any more files to be encrypted, and he shut the files down. And now he's worried that he has a couple shut down Windows file shares that might have been affected by cryptoware, and he is worried that there may be cryptoware happening elsewhere in the organization. So he calls his boss and says, this is what I think happened, and these are the actions that I've taken. His boss calls me, and I immediately kick off an incident. So the first thing that I do is I either go to a conference room, or I start a team, not necessarily a Microsoft team, but some kind of team chat situation, and we pull in some initial folks to be our initial response team. I put these contact sheets up on the wall, and we build out the incident from the contact sheets. So, I get a resource manager, someone who can get me sysadmins, network planners, other folks like that. I pull in a communications person, someone who sends email on behalf of our department. And I pull in a scribe. So I grab, maybe a service desk member or someone from my team, and I ask them to take notes on the incident as we go along and to help me keep these contact sheets up to date. I publish these contact sheets to the team in a way where they're able to update, where anyone on the team is able to update them. And then we set meeting cadences. So I typically tend to set 1.5 hour meeting cadences for serious incidents. I think that gives us enough time to work and then come back with something valuable. And we start to log the incident, the team meetings, and we log when we send out our status messages. The communications person is responsible for writing up something saying what is down. So here's the incident that we have right now. First of all, the information we have, and I put timestamp here. I think this is important for meetings, but because this is a demo incident, I'll just use the current time. 8:17. Notification of file changes, let's say mass notification of file changes on file server 01 and file server 01 shut down. This is, just so everybody knows, I love to break up information and confirmed information into 2 different pages because we hear tons of rumors. Whoa, that's weird. Because I hear a ton of rumors during an incident. A lot of information comes in that is kind of garbage, and I ask that everybody update the information section, and then when something is confirmed, we move it down to the confirmed section. So this has been confirmed by our sysadmin, so I'm going to move it down into the confirmed section. And I tend to put this information sheet up by a door that's nearest to the service desk team, and that lets the service desk team come in and write what is down. And so now that the file servers are down, a service desk person might come in and say, I think GIS is down. GIS is like a geospatial platform. So now we're worried that GIS is down. We don't know why. The file servers are down. Maybe it's a prerequisite. Maybe the file server is a prerequisite for the GIS system. And next up, we need to start listing the things that are down. So we know file serve 01 is down, and that serves the A, B, and C drives. So if those drives are down, department drives or things like that, obviously those files are inaccessible by the users, and that is a serious issue. And we begin, now that we know what's down and what are the circumstances of this incident, I begin pulling people in and we start working on the incident. So I pull in a resource manager and ask for sysadmins, and we ask those sysadmins to get to work. Tasks like, and I'm going to ignore time due here. So I get a sysadmin named Bill, for example, and I say, Bill, I need you to secure the backups. This could be a cryptoware incident, and the backups are lifeline. Go secure the backups. And I have another sysadmin named Ted, and I say, Ted, we need to take a look at the CPU of all of the systems in our environment that are centrally managed, and we need to find, for example, if there are systems that have elevated CPU, maybe there's a way that we can detect which other systems are encrypting files. So Ted is going to do that. And then Jim, let's have Jim. I had a good idea here for Jim. Typically when you're running an incident, you have a team of people coming up with ideas, right? You've brought them together. They're all talking in the context of these sheets that you've put up. And in a cryptoware incident, people very quickly move on to what else could be wrong. So we might have Jim take a look at the Active Directory servers and see if there's been abuse of our users or issues like that. And now there's a lull. I've given some assignments out. We're probably getting more information from the service desk coming in about which systems are down, who's frustrated that these drive letters are no longer accessible. And we need to send something out to the organization saying, folks, we're experiencing an issue and the issue has resulted in this kind of outage, and here's what you can expect from us. And so we send out a system status message. So our communications person, and by the way, I make these assignments, these are automatic assignments. So I bring in people, the communications person determines the communication cadence and schedules those communications, and I schedule a team meeting, and you send out actual meeting appointments for these things. So our communications person sends out a system status message saying that drives A, B, and C are down. We apologize for the inconvenience, and we're working on this issue. And you can expect another communication from us in 1.5 hours at this time, which will be, 10 o'clock basically. And I think it's important when you do those communications that you are fulfilling on your promises. So I try to set an expectation with communications people that we don't blow it, just like I don't blow it. When I do my meeting, we make it happen. We meet on time. If people blow off the meeting to get their tasks done, that doesn't work. So now, Bill, I'm going to have to I guess I'm not going to look it up. There is no good way to do, no, there is a good way to do strike through. Bill gets back to me and says, the backup servers are bulletproof. They are hardened such that you need a specific secure workstation to get on them. Those workstations have not been accessed. The backup systems have not been accessed. They're off-site. There's nothing that's going to get to our backups. And that's obviously something you have to plan for ahead of time. So we're going to strike the backups off of the system, or I mean off of the assignments list. On Ted, he went out, found no computers with a high CPU load. And so we're going to mark that off as well. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that yet. Jim goes to AD and Jim gets back something very strange. So Jim comes back and says, why is that bold? Tons of AD user activity. And we immediately jumped to the conclusion that perhaps a bunch of our AD users are being affected. And I said no CPU, but I'm going to go with a little different tack here. So let's say we also find out from Ted that we have elevated CPU on several desktops. And I'm going to mark Ted's job off because he did it. So now we're looking at a report from Active Directory that shows a ton of user activity. And I wish I could pull this report, an example of this report up. But it's showing almost every user in the organization has a bunch of file change activity going on. And everybody within the incident team is losing their minds. It's really scary to see that kind of thing, because if your AD is compromised, you are toast as an organization. And even the best incident handling crew is going to struggle with a pwned AD to get something back for your organization. And that's where something that I've learned over many, many, many incidents comes into play. You really have to read those reports carefully. So we go back and read through these reports, and we do not move things down into confirmed information until they're confirmed. So we task somebody with really looking at this elevated CPU and really looking at this tons of AD user activity. And what we find out, and this is just a demo incident, we find out that this report was run really fast and somebody pulled in way too broad of a scope. So maybe the last 10 days instead of the last 2 hours for this report. And so, of course, almost every user in the organization has changed some files over the last 10 days, but almost no one has changed any files over the last 2 hours. So this turns out to be a false positive. And I can't stress enough that I have spent and wasted more time in incidents running down false positive stuff by treating information as correct. And when you work an incident within your own group, you really, really, really need to be circumspect of false positive, or of the kinds of information that come in. Because if they turn out to be a false positive, you're going to waste a ton of time on them. I've spent more time working on false positive stuff than I have working on the actual real issues, which is ludicrous, but it totally happens. This, on the other hand, is real. We're obviously worried about this. And these elevated CPUs, we double checked a different way. We jumped on one of them. And sure enough, this CPU is elevated because that system is crapping out binary files and text files that contain ransom notes. So this thing is true, and we're going to move it down to the confirmed information. And maybe I should do this. For this one that's false, we're going to strike it. We don't care about the AD activity. So now, going back to Bill. And remember, this is I mean, we'd have hours and days to work through identification and containment, but I'm just trying to get through the whole process of this incident for folks today. So, keep in mind, we're not going to do root cause analysis here or anything like that, but just imagine in broad strokes, if you were running an incident and you were being traumatized by having your file shares down, having your users be upset, you would be doing a whole constellation of more different team meetings and conversations and things like that. But we're moving through this pretty fast just to get everybody a glimpse of the process and why these 4 context sheets are essential. So we've tasked Bill with getting a list of pwned computers, and Ted, what we don't want to do is get the list and sit on it in case it's spreading. So, oh, I'm sorry. Sean, move his webcam window to see sheet 4. Uh-oh, you guys can't see sheet 4? Or did I do it? I'm not sure. Give me one, tell me what's up, Sean. Just the top right. What if I move this down? Is that better? This is fun. I can't see my own stream, so. Okay.
Benjamin, that worked. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. If folks weren't able to see this, this is my sort of template assignments, and then everything below these are the assignments that I've been making for people working the team. Okay. So Bill's going to get the list of pwned computers, whether it's by CPU or by doing, a PowerShell script that searches for the ransom notes or other things like that. Ted's going to start shutting down pwned computers, and we're going to shut systems down until we stop seeing this activity. And if your mind goes straight to, well, other computers could be pwned but not generating, cryptoware notices, that's absolutely true. I'm not saying that you will have achieved containment through this, but it is just for the purposes of working through this abbreviated engagement that we're doing here today. So we assume for this engagement that as Ted works through shutting down all these computers, we're going to be in good shape. And we know that our Active Directory is probably safe. And so we want to start working on this file server. And we sit down and we think about it. Do we want to bring it up without a network interface maybe so we can see what's on it? Do we want to just blow it away and rebuild it? What is the plan for this file server so that we can get it back in the hands of the users? So ultimately, we decide that we want to rebuild it from backups. I would say that you can get a little ahead of yourself during incident handling by trying to get into a recovery phase before you're done with the containment phase. But for the purposes of this, we're going to ask Jim to rebuild fileserv 01 from backups. Bill starts to knock out the things that are pwned. Uh-oh, I'm going to have to shrink this a little bit. So we get word back from Bill and Ted that they are done shutting down pwned computers. We want them to wait an hour, and make sure that no new high CPU events happen or things that we can use to detect those cryptoware computers. In the meanwhile, Jim is cranking out a new file share. We send out another system status. This is the system status saying, we have the issue contained. We really appreciate your patience. Shares A, B, and C are going to be back available within whatever time frame, whatever we feel like Jim can get done with his rebuild task. And so Jim finishes up that rebuild, and file server 01 returns to being online. And so we're going to strike it from the down list. And then we're going to strike Jim's assignment. We're going to send a final system status saying that we've restored. So at this point, we were able to identify the incident, pull in people, create a process for working it together as a team, pull in information, confirm that information to make the choices that we need to make within the environment, track which systems were up and down, track what we all agreed we were going to do to move through the incident, avoid false positives, and we sent out high quality user communication throughout the whole process. I submit that that is good enough for incident handling. If you can run an incident like that, you are doing a good enough job at facilitating knocking out a major situation within your organization. And these are really scary. You know, when you sit down and it's your systems that are damaged, these are really scary. So we finally are able to send a system status now. Final system status saying the issue is contained and the file server, the file shares A, B, and C have been restored to everybody's PCs, and we hope you have a great day. There is one last step that I always do in every single incident, which I leave on the contact sheet so that I can remember to do it, which is to facilitate a detailed incident debrief and publish the lessons learned. And the fun part about facilitating an incident debrief, if you've done this in a conference room with white contact sheets, is that you can pull the team of people that you listed under team back together. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have done this. So I've got these guys listed. I didn't want to lose them. You can pull everyone back together and you can relive the incident together because you have the sheets and you have the record of how things went down. So you can go through them by timestamp and say, this is what happened here. Was everyone okay with how we handled it? Was there too much table talk? And someone might come back and say, yeah, the communications person might have said, look, everybody was talking at the same time and it was really hard for me to have the chance to write down the system status message and get it out. And there were a ton of typos in it or something because I didn't have the environment that I needed. And that gives an incident handler like me valuable information that I can use to tune this process and add more instructions or manage the table talk better during the incident or things like that. And I just want to draw everybody's attention to some of the details of the way these contact sheets lay all of this really, really plain. So you can always, if you are handling an incident for long enough, you have to go to bed. You absolutely have to say to another human being, I'm handing this off to you and I need you to work it. And the cool thing about this process is that even though I'm the only person who really does incident handling work within the organization, anyone you hand it off to will be able to look at these sheets and understand, what am I doing? I'm asking these people to get through these tasks that we've assigned. I'm keeping up to date the list of things that are down and the information that comes in. That's all we're asking for the 12-hour shift that you're doing. You don't even have to be an expert at, the SANS phases or anything like that, because anything that doesn't get done while you have assigned someone else to be the incident handler, you will see on the contact sheets isn't done. And when you get the incident back, you can finish out those items. So that's what makes this scalable, is that you can hand this incident off. For example, you can call your cybersecurity insurance company, and if they fly someone out to help you, that person will recognize exactly what's going on when they look at these sheets. If you work for a city or a county and you ask for an emergency manager to come and help you, the emergency manager will look at this and this will be very familiar to them and they will know exactly what's going on. And that emergency manager for you or that kind of professional will be able to coordinate where are people going to sleep, how are you going to get water, because you keep in mind this kind of incident handling is doesn't do a great job the way it's designed here of getting people drinking water or a place to sleep. And that is those things come up very, very quickly if you're handling an incident 24/7 for 3 days or for 6 weeks or for something like that. So you need to be prepared to scale this up, but it scales up so easily. As you grow the information that you have available, you put more contact sheets on the wall. If the contact sheets are not appropriate, you move it into an electronic format. But the fundamental structure behind it, no matter how large the information set is, no matter how long the term of the engagement is, this is still that fundamental set of information that you have to work that incident front to back. And so finally, after you've worked through the whole incident and you've brought all your stuff back, oh man, here's Doug. Finally, after you worked through the whole range of issues, you want to publish some kind of lessons learned. And obviously, when I say publish, I don't mean publish to the press or anything like that. Although your communications person should be able to work together with a press liaison or things like that, if that's necessary. That's absolutely built into this process. And it can be very important to manage the press depending on what kind of organization you are. But what I mean is publishing some kind of knowledge about the incident. And a basic expectation that I would have for publishing information coming back out of an incident is way beyond just the nature of the incident. You have to have a full root cause analysis done before you're done with the incident, before you're publishing. You have to know what hardening would have needed to be done within your organization in order to prevent this kind of incident in the future. And you want to be able to say that that hardening has been done. You don't want to just publish that it's a good idea. You want to say you were able to get it accomplished. But most importantly, for some of my purposes, you want to be able to say the kinds of damage that the incident caused. And so you want to keep track of how much money did you spend, how much staff time did you spend, how much vendor time, not necessarily their staff time, but keep track of some details about your vendors, the people that you worked with. You know, if you called Mandiant in to help you out with something, or if Microsoft's engineers were on the phone with you for 30 hours, you want to keep track of some of those materials and details. Let's see. Okay, time, money, reputation damage. That's not quantifiable typically. Actually, there's probably somebody out there who has a cool way to quantify reputation damage, but I don't know how to quantify reputation damage. So that's a little bit of a qualified measurement. But if you keep track of your incidents and you keep track of how much they cost you, how much staff time they used, and what happened to the reputation of your organization as a result, over time, you can show the effectiveness of your cybersecurity program and of your incident handling techniques, because you're able to say at the end of the year, here was how much we suffered based on this kind of investment. And so you can always tie that back to the investment that's being made in cybersecurity, or back to suggestions that you have about how to do security well. So if you're a security leader, you want these metrics coming back out of your incident handling process. And I assure you that if you don't collect them during the lessons learned phase, they'll be lost. And for city and county folks out there, obviously you could be reimbursed for some of these things under certain circumstances, if only by your cybersecurity insurance company. But sometimes even at the federal level, you can be reimbursed for these kinds of incidents. So that is an overview of how this process works. And I will say one more time that I have worked this process dozens and dozens and dozens of times. I mean, I literally had one where it was like the doctor's like I said, I use this for my wife. I had like all the doctor contact information under my team, and I had the appointments that we were going to do. And I had the medications and their schedules. And, you know, that process, that modified process actually worked extremely well for my family as well. So I will make these templates available to anybody who's interested in them. And I do have a few other fun incident handling materials that I will make available. But I will say that there are people like Doug Brush who have traveled all over the world, you know, who have been dropped into unique places and situations and worked incidents with nothing except like a dull spoon. And some of those people can tell you more about some things you may need to know if you're interested in pursuing a career as an incident handler. For example, you really may need to know how to pack a kit or things like that. There may be critical things that you need to have in a backpack if you're going to like go somewhere and work an incident. And I'm not an expert at that. I am a defensive security person. So I work incidents at my own organization for my own organization. Usually the team of people I'm working with is my people or people we've brought in as vendors. So keep in mind that you'll have to heavily modify this process if you want to use it at your next engagement in a foreign country or things like that. But I think no matter where you go, you may well have, you may well find that these materials are perfectly adequate for working through almost any kind of incident or disaster that crops up within your environment. So I'm going to stop sharing. I will get those materials put together and I am done.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. That was fantastic. Admittedly, I was listening to it on 3 different audio streams, slightly different offsets.
That's fine.
But it sounded really interesting. So if you want to move over to the Discord,
I shall.
And you can do, I believe there are ways to do voice and video in there if you want to, but if you just want to do text, that's fine as well.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you for volunteering to contribute today. It means a lot to have, I mean, especially, you know, we're besides Denver. You're, you know, a brother city just up the road, considered part of the Denver Metro Front Range, more or less. As much as Boulder doesn't like to admit that sometimes.
Oh, we totally are. And I will say this, our cybersecurity community that we have along the whole corridor of the Front Range is very tight through groups like Colorado Equals Security and this B-Sides group. You know, it's a huge honor to be a part of all of the different people working shoulder to shoulder against the adversaries to protect the Front Range. And I do think we have one of the strongest cybersecurity communities in the world for that reason.
That's really good to hear. I've actually been involved in the community for a while, and I can remember a time where there was and is a group called the 303. It's mostly just a drinking group with a hacker problem, and I would run into people at like DEF CON, for instance, who were, you know, full into security, very knowledgeable, very smart, very, you know, relatively speaking for hackers, social people, who would say, "Oh yeah, we've heard of 303. We don't like those guys." And I would never hear from them again. So it's improved a lot over the years.
Yeah, I don't know that I've been around long enough to see that. I think, like I said, we have such great leadership from the state level in cybersecurity, brings a lot of diversity together into our area. And then Colorado Equals Security is unmatched, in my opinion, around major metropolitan areas for bringing our cybersecurity leaders and talent together to share all kinds of things. So I'm proud to be here. I'm going to jump over on the Discord. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.